When I first met my husband, Daniel, I believed we would be together forever. He was older, steady, and carried himself with a confidence that made me feel safe. For years, we lived what looked like the perfect marriage. We had a beautiful home, successful careers, and on the outside, people envied us. But inside, something had started to crumble long before I was willing to admit it. Our conversations grew shorter, our laughter rarer, and the spark that once lit up our lives faded into routine. I told myself that all marriages went through stages, that comfort was just another form of love, but deep inside, I longed for more, something vibrant, something alive. It was during this fragile time that I met Alex. He was 25, nearly 15 years younger than me, and he entered my life so unexpectedly that I still wonder if fate had orchestrated it. Alex had been hired as a consultant at the company where I worked as a project manager. From the first meeting, his energy filled the room. He spoke with passion, challenged ideas, and looked at the world as if everything was still possible. I was drawn to that energy, though I didn't understand why at first. At the office, he treated me with respect but not the stiff politeness I often received from younger colleagues. Instead, he joked, teased, and sometimes looked at me in ways that made my heart race against my will. I ignored it at first, brushing it off as nothing more than youthful charm. But soon, I caught myself lingering around him during coffee breaks, laughing a little too loudly at his stories, and noticing the warmth in his smile when our eyes met. The first real moment of conflict came one evening after work. A group of us had stayed late finishing a project, and by the time we left, the office was nearly empty. I offered him a ride since his car was in the shop. During the drive, the conversation was easy, flowing from work to music to our dreams, as if we had known each other for years. When I parked in front of his apartment, he turned to me and said, "You don't talk like other people. You really listen. It feels rare." His words caught me off guard. For so long, I had felt invisible. In my own marriage, to hear someone notice me, really see me, was both comforting and dangerous. I drove home that night with a storm of emotions. Guilt sat heavy in my chest, but so did a strange thrill I couldn't shake. Daniel was waiting, sitting in front of the TV, barely looking up when I walked in. He asked if I had eaten. I said yes. That was the end of our exchange. I went upstairs and sat in the quiet, replaying Alex's words over and over. Days turned into weeks, and my connection with Alex deepened. It was never anything physical, never anything inappropriate, but the emotional pull was undeniable. We shared secrets, laughed about silly mistakes at work, and sometimes our conversations drifted into late-night messages about life and fears. Every time my phone buzzed with his name, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, but the suspense of what I was doing gnawed at me. I knew the line between friendship and something more was dangerously thin. Daniel noticed the distance, though he never confronted me directly. Instead, he withdrew further, as if both of us were silently agreeing not to address the void growing between us. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday evening. The project team had gone out for dinner to celebrate a successful launch. Most people left early, but Alex and I stayed behind, talking long after the restaurant had emptied. When we finally stepped outside, the rain was pouring, and I had forgotten my umbrella. Without hesitation, he pulled me under his jacket, his arm brushing mine as we hurried to my car. The closeness, the sound of rain hitting the pavement, the way he looked at MIT was all too much. For a moment, I wanted to give in, to let the emotions I had buried surface fully, but then the image of my husband waiting at home flashed through my mind, and I pulled away. "I can't," I whispered, my voice trembling. Alex looked at me, his expression filled with a mixture of frustration and understanding. "I know," he said quietly, "but you're not happy. Anyone can see that." His words haunted me for days. He was right, I wasn't happy. I hadn't been for years. But what did that mean? That I should walk away from a marriage built on years of history, or should I ignore what my heart was screaming and stay bound to a life that felt empty? The suspense of it all consumed me. Every choice felt like betrayal. I avoided Alex at work for a week, trying to bury the feelings, but the silence between us hurt more than the guilt. Eventually, he cornered me in the office hallway, his voice low but steady. "You can keep pretending everything's fine, but you deserve more than a life that doesn't make you smile." That night, I sat across from Daniel at dinner, watching him eat in silence. I tried to remember the man I had fallen in love with, the man who once made me laugh until my sides hurt. But all I saw was someone who had become a stranger. I realized with a sinking heart that love wasn't supposed to feel like emptiness. The decision didn't come suddenly. Nor was it easy. 4 weeks I wrestled with myself, torn between loyalty and longing. Suspense followed me everywhere, like a shadow whispering what I already knew. Change was inevitable. Finally, one evening, I told Daniel the truth. Not about Alex, but about us. About how distant we had become. How unhappy I was. How I felt like I was living with a ghost of what we once had. He didn't fight me. He didn't even ask why. He simply nodded, as if he had been waiting for this moment too. Leaving was the hardest thing I had ever done. I moved into a small apartment closer to the city, starting over with more questions, then answers. Alex was there, yes, but he never pressured me. In fact, 4 weeks after my separation, he kept his distance, giving me space to grieve the end of my marriage. That patience spoke louder than any words ever could. When we finally met again, it wasn't with fireworks or sudden declarations. It was simple. A walk in the park. To people who had been through storms, finding comfort in each other's presence. There was still suspense, of course, questions about the future, about whether we were strong enough to weather the judgment and the challenges. But for the first time in years, I felt alive, hopeful, and unafraid of what might come next. She was married. Until a younger man changed everything. Not because he swept her off her feet with grand gestures, but because he reminded her of something she had forgotten, what it felt like to be truly seen, truly heard, and truly alive, and in that reminder, her entire life changed.